Hello, and welcome back to the Rebellious Sacred Heart podcast. My name is Christina, and I'm so glad you're here. Today, we are going to be talking about my out-of-body experience. So this is going to be fun. And what goes along with that is all the signs and synchronicities that accompanied that out-of-body experience. Before it happened. In fact, it almost felt like it was predicting it now that I look back. And then what happened afterwards and what's happened since then. So before I get into it, as I was getting ready to record today, I felt like Spirit had a message. And I didn't know if I assumed it was for me, so I pulled out my Sacred Rebels Oracle deck by Alana Fairchild. And I asked my guides if there was anything that I needed to know before I start recording, or if there was a message that they would like me to share. So after reading that card that popped out, I felt like it was a message for all of us. So here it is. The card that fell out was the Sacred Fool, number 40 in the deck. And here's the message, because I feel like it might relate to a lot of us here. It's 2:02 on the clock, by the way. Did not plan that, which is a 4-0. So the Sacred Fool. The Sacred Fool is a great rebel, able to thwart convention and tell the truth without restraint. Your heart is a wonderful, powerful, sacred fool. It cares not for the right way to do things. It cares not for what the mind says is real and not real. It lives according to an inner wisdom that cannot be dictated to or controlled by anything else. It loves, it lives, and it is what is. This oracle heralds a time, now or imminent, when you will feel inspired, alive, and passionate for what you can offer to the world. It says to you, don't try to be appropriate, don't try to be socially acceptable, and worry about what others may think about what you are doing. Just be. If you want to wear a mad hat while doing so, fine. So I'm not wearing a mad hat or anything like that, but I do feel inspired and alive and passionate for what I'm offering to you right now. Anyways, continuing with the message in the card, the Sacred Fool in you is willing to leave behind what has been because it no longer feels right to stay attached to it. You mean like my out-of-body experience? This is so real for me. The Sacred Fool in you trusts life completely. It would never occur to this part of you to try to outsmart life or resist its flow. It recognizes that the mind is a monkey puppet on strings. More often than not, it is cajoled into fear when it could be playfully dwelling in the radical spontaneity of life. So the Sacred Fool in you urges your mind to let itself be pulled into joy by your heartstrings, not into fear and doubt by the controlling machines of the mass media. This oracle brings you a message. It's time for you to play. It's time for you to let life happen in a completely unreserved and scripted way. This more bizarre, left of field, unexpected, and apparently ridiculous, the better. This might not feel safe or appropriate at first. That's okay. That is actually good. It is a sign that you are breaking with your own self-imposed conventions, and it is a time to move beyond them now because a bigger life adventure is calling to you. This is wonderful news. It is the desire of life to operate more radically through you so that you can become the conduit through which miracles and crazy wild synchronicity can occur. You are becoming more electric. You are more plugged into the apparent randomness of life. Apparent because there is a refined intelligence behind it all. The Sacred Fool goes with this without having to understand any of it, which is good because trying to access even one genuine glimpse of life's unfathomable genius would probably make one's head explode. So as you take this journey, you may find that people around you are challenged. You might intentionally cause them to rethink the way they live their lives. They may question whether the way that they are living is the only way for them or even the best way. At first, they may react rather than take responsibility. The sacred fool in you doesn't engage with this. It is what it is, and it rises and falls at will. It doesn't stop you from your merry dance of unconventional being. So if you find yourself making choices that have others questioning your sanity, then you are right on course. You may feel like you are quite possibly going insane, but you are not crazy. You are not just approaching enlightened awareness. There is a moment, and sometimes rather a long one, when we wake up to life, we shed our attachment to mass opinion and float in a completely different state of being. We might find that no one is really able to understand or connect with us to the point that we question our own state of mind. Stay with that. It will pass. You will eventually see that you are becoming sane in an insane world. The tables will turn and you will gain great inner freedom and creative juice. Stay on your path. Stay on the journey. Remember to take nothing too seriously, and it will all work out perfectly. Well, if that isn't a card for today, talking about all these things and what I experienced, and this may resonate with all of you as well. In fact, I have a feeling that there's a message in there for probably most of you that are listening to this, because we're always drawn to things for a reason. So, on that note, or expanding on that, but before I get into the details of my actual out-of-body experience, there's a few things that I'd like to explain about what I was doing just prior to this experience. This will help give you an idea of where I was in life at that time. And as I mentioned in my last podcast, I've basically been on an intentional journey of truth for my own personal truth for a few years now, but there were a few things that stood out when this out-of-body experience spontaneously happened to me. And these are also things that I feel are specifically significant and directly related to it. So we'll see if you agree with me or if you think I'm crazy. Maybe I'm the sacred fool. Actually, I am. So, angel numbers, the repeating numbers that we were talking about even in the last podcast, these were showing up in my world quite a bit. So, and it was so often that looking at angel numbers led me to dive deeper into gematria and numerology and the synchronicities between all of it and life. I also started practicing Qigong, and I was working with energy and even experimenting with telekinesis. I still do. So speaking of energy, I was also, and because this out-of-body experience happened last year, and I've been doing some of these things for a time, but these are specific to what I was doing like right around that week before my out-of-body experience. So I was following the Schumann resonance on a daily basis. Now, for those of you that don't know what that is, the Schumann resonance basically is a system that monitors and records the Earth's magnetism and frequency. And I got a little bit more information from schumannresonance.org, and it basically states that the Schumann resonance is often referred to as the Earth's heartbeat, Mother Earth's heartbeat. I've heard that. It says that the Schumann resonance encompasses extremely low frequency, quasi-standing electromagnetic waves. These waves resonate within the space between the Earth's surface and the ionosphere, creating a symphony of energy that permeates our planet. Now, interestingly enough, they have been looking into the relationship between the Schumann resonance and consciousness. So on schumannresonance.org, it says that venturing into the realm of consciousness, researchers are now exploring how Schumann resonance fluctuations might affect human awareness. Preliminary studies indicate potential synchronization between brainwaves and Schumann resonance rhythms during specific periods. While these findings challenge conventional notions, they also emphasize the complexity of understanding consciousness and its interactions with external factors. Now, this is quite significant to what happened with the energies that I was feeling during my out-of-body experience. So hang in there. I got one more thing to tell you before I get into the specific details. And all of this, again, will tie into my out-of-body experience. So it did happen in July of last year. So we're coming up on the 1-year anniversary. And I will tell you that my life's quite dramatically changed since then, especially now that I look back. So, and although I'd been, spending the last few years growing and learning in so many ways, nothing could have prepared me or my husband for what happened that day. Or could it? Maybe it could. Maybe the things that happened that week before and during and after are all part of the plan. You'll have to let me know what you think when we get all through this, whether or not you think it's just a coincidence or not. But here's how it went. So also the week before my out-of-body experience, I had just heard about the gene keys. So I started looking into this. If you don't know about the gene keys, I considered it very similar to human design. And you may or may not have heard of that, but it's basically like getting a birth chart, and it uses the time, date, and location of your birth. But I feel like the gene keys is more about revealing your spiritual path and life purpose. And again, if you don't know anything about the gene keys, what I'll do is I'll actually leave a link in the description for you, and you can put your information in there, and they'll give you a little report and give you an idea of what it's all about. So Richard Rudd is the creator and author of the Gene Keys, and it took him about 7 years to write it all and interpret the information that he was being given or downloaded, channeled, whatever you want to call it. But he describes the Gene Keys in this way. He states that the Gene Keys are a living wisdom. They are teachings to imbibe, contemplate, and apply in your daily life. As you allow them to percolate inside you one by one, your troubles will begin to fall away, and you will find yourself inhabiting a new and brighter life. So, based on just that description, that sounds pretty cool, right? And I don't know about you, but I sure wanted my troubles to fall away. So I was like, let's giddy up on that. Let's run that report. What I didn't expect was to literally watch my body spontaneously fall away from me. But I would highly recommend that you check out the link and just see what it's all about. I doubt that everyone has an out-of-body experience as a result of looking at the Gene Keys. So anyways, I had my report run, and like 4 days before this, I think, 4 days before it happened, I ordered the book so I could look into it and start deciphering it all, because there's a lot of information there, I will say that. So on the day of my out-of-body experience, I had actually been reading about the key that relates to my life's purpose, which that happened to be the 14th gene key. And this is where it gets good, because once I read that to you, after I give you the details of my out-of-body experience, and I read that section to you, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. There are just so many synchronicities here. So anyways, okay, here it is. On July 20th of 2023, it was just an ordinary Thursday to me. But my husband must have had a short day at work or something, because we actually took some time in the afternoon to go out running errands earlier in the day. And while we were out, my husband said something that he doesn't normally say. He's just mentioning how he felt so drained. We had walked from a store back to our truck or whatever, and he's like, God, I just feel so drained. And he goes, I feel like I've been running a marathon. And he never says anything like that. So it kind of stood out to me. But then I had to admit that I had been feeling the same way. In fact, that's when I told him that I've been having headaches for 2 days, the last 2 days prior to this. So that's very unusual for me. I don't get headaches. I don't have problems with migraines or headaches or anything. It's not anything that I usually deal with. But because we follow the Schumann resonance, we decided that it was probably just due to the increased energies of the earth. And of course, when we got home, I went and checked the Schumann resonance, and it showed on the chart that there had been a spike in energies, and it was showing up as white light on the chart. So, we left it at that, and we were content with that being the explanation, because both of us have noticed in the past that when the Schumann resonance spikes or shows major fluctuations like that, we tend to feel it. We feel it in different ways, but excuse me, we do tend to feel it on a physical level. So we just decided to chill and, sit outside and back under our big, beautiful maple tree. So we'd been sitting out there for about an hour, just talking, and we were checking Twitter, talking about that stuff. And right before it all started happening, my voice, sorry about that. I had noticed a tweet by Divine Consciousness. And it stood out to me because it directly related to how we were just talking about what we were feeling. And the tweet by Divine Consciousness said this: "Feels like the energy is shifting. How are you feeling?" That was it. It was just that sentence. Feels like the energy is shifting. How are you feeling? And so I showed him that, and we were just like, well, that makes sense with everything we're feeling. So I decided to read the comments and see what people were saying. And someone had mentioned that they also were experiencing headaches for the last 2 days, just like I had. And my husband and I both thought it was pretty interesting. And of course, we both felt like the energies must be shifting too. That's what we were feeling. So as I was scrolling to see if there were any more comments, I suddenly started to feel really nauseous. It was literally all of a sudden. I went from feeling fine, and we were just commenting about the energies and agreeing that, obviously we're not the only ones feeling it. But I started to feel dizzy and then lightheaded. And next thing I know, I'm starting to sweat. And yes, I'm outside and it's warm out. It's summer, but the kind of sweat where you feel like you're about to get sick. So I put my tablet down. I'd pulled my legs up to my chest, and I closed my eyes, and I just started to concentrate on my breathing. Just breathing in and out slowly, in through my nose, out through my mouth, because I didn't want to throw up. But it wasn't really doing anything. It wasn't really feeling better. I did that for quite a few minutes. And after a little bit of time, I wasn't feeling any better. So I decided to throw my flip-flops off and put my bare feet back on the grass to ground myself, thinking that would help get myself grounded. Oh no, that actually made it so much worse. I have never felt this before in grounding, and my husband and I ground all the time. But when I put my feet on the ground at that moment, I started to feel a buzzing energy and tingling going through my body. And it felt like the energy was coming up through the earth and into my feet and into my body. Now, this made the nausea worse. So, I probably only had my feet there for maybe a minute because I couldn't take it anymore. It was actually making me feel worse. I totally expected it to make me feel better. So I pulled my feet back up onto my chair to get me from, the earth, and just kept trying to breathe slowly. Well, basically, nothing was helping. And I was really starting to feel like I might toss my cookies at any time. So I told my husband that I was going to go in the house and lay on the couch because I just didn't know what else to do at that point. So I got up and I headed toward the house to go inside. Luckily, my husband had the wherewithal to follow me into the house, because as soon as I crossed the threshold into the house, I felt myself losing my balance and I started to fall. And I remember this part. And it almost felt like it was happening in slow motion. And had he not been there to catch me, I would have hit my head on the kitchen island, because I do actually remember thinking as I was falling that I hope I don't hit my head. So at this point, I don't remember anything after that. I don't remember hitting the ground at all. I don't remember my husband catching me. I didn't feel any of that. But as I was falling, it started to feel like my soul was literally leaving my body. Like I felt like my consciousness was leaving my body through my feet. And then the next thing I know, I was outside of my body and I was just watching everything that was happening play out from a totally different perspective. Like at this point, I was viewing the kitchen that my body was laying in from an outside perspective. I saw my body on the kitchen floor, but at first I don't really remember seeing anything around my body. It was almost like I couldn't really make out where I was. But as I watched my body for a minute, I noticed that my body was starting to shake. It was starting to shake somewhat violently, and it looked to me like I would expect a seizure to look like. I have never experienced a seizure before. I have never fainted before. I have never seen a seizure, like other than people having them on TV or something. But that's what I was viewing. I was seeing my body shake violently like a seizure. But I didn't have any emotion about it as I was looking at it. I was just observing. I couldn't feel anything that my body looked like it was experiencing. I couldn't feel any of that. I really didn't feel anything one way or another other than calm and peaceful. I was absolutely unattached to the scene that I was watching. But I knew it was me. And at some point, I was able to view the whole room, and I could see my husband scrambling, trying to figure out what to do. Like he looked like he was in a frenzy. And so anyways, I was watching all this happen. And the weirdest part was, like, I remember looking at what was happening and thinking to myself, am I dying? And then it was almost like in an instant that when I was outside of my body, I had that thought, like, am I dying? And then the next thing I knew, it felt like I had my eyes closed and that I had opened my eyes. But I still wasn't connected to my body. But now I was looking at everything through the perspective of being in my body. It looked like I was looking out of my eye sockets, but I wasn't connected to my body. It's almost kind of hard to explain. It felt like I was inside of a shell, but I was looking out of my eye sockets. But I didn't feel connected to it at all, is the only way I can try to explain it. So I was seeing now from the perspective of being inside my body, laying on the floor, even though I was still felt separated from my body. I could actually see at this point, because I don't know how much time passed, because the moment right before that, when I was still outside of my body, my husband wasn't near my body, but when I was back in my body and I opened my eyes, I saw my husband. Like, I could see him over me, and it looked like he was terrified. He was looking at my face, like his eyes were really close to mine, and it looked like he was yelling. Like, I could see his mouth moving, but at this point, I couldn't hear anything. I knew I was back in my body, but I couldn't hear anything that he was saying. I could just see his mouth moving, and it looked like he was yelling at me. He was really scared. But it was, again, just so weird. All I could think is like, why am I not hearing anything? And then I had that thought again where I was like, am I dead? And then right after I thought at that time, I could faintly start to hear a voice in the background. It almost felt like it was far away and muffled. Then, like, literally, like a snap of a finger, everything was back. I was back in my body, and I heard him yelling my name. He was over me yelling, "Chrissy, Chrissy," at full volume. And I could barely speak. I was just kind of coming back in at that moment. But I faintly got out the word, he's yelling at me. He's yelling, "Chrissy, Chrissy." And I'm like, what? And at that moment that I could actually speak, and I said, what? I said, why are you yelling at me? And then I just saw this sense of relief, and the blood returned to his face, and he let out this big sigh, and he just hung his head over me. And then I said, what happened? And because it was almost like, once I came to at that second and my body was back, like I remembered knowing that I was out of my body, but I didn't really remember. It didn't connect as to why I was laying on the floor at that moment. I really don't even know how to explain it. But then I asked him what happened, not realizing or really remembering that I fainted or that I was on the floor. He had my head in his arms. And then, so once I came to, he laid me all the way down on the floor, and he was still, freaking out basically. And he went to get a towel to wet a towel for my head, because that's what we do in our family. When someone's feeling nauseous, we get a wet washcloth or we get a wet towel and put it over your forehead. But, now that I was starting to like connect with my body and feel what was happening in my body, I went back basically to feeling dizzy again. But like now what I was feeling, my heart was so hot. My heart, like the center of my chest was so hot. It felt like it was on fire, and it felt like my heart was literally beating out of my chest. And I couldn't breathe. I couldn't catch my breath. It felt like I couldn't breathe. And so I asked him to get me something. He brought the cold towel, put it on my forehead. But now I'm like, I need something for my chest. Can you get like an ice pack or something for my chest? I feel like my heart is on fire. So he went to go, get that. And he put the ice pack on my heart. And it took a while. I literally laid there. I couldn't move, like nothing. I couldn't move my limbs. I couldn't pick up my arms or do anything. Like I laid there. I could feel obviously heat in my heart. I could feel the tingling in my body. I felt that I was dizzy, but I wasn't able to control anything at that point. Like I wasn't able to lift my legs, my head, my arms, nothing. So I was trying to figure out what was happening. I just remember laying there saying, what is happening to me? And as he's still trying to figure out what the fuck to do and all of that, the tingling started getting more intense, the tingling through my body. Similar to what I had been feeling prior to me fainting or seizing, whatever you want to call it, leaving my body. But it was so much more intense. It was starting to feel like there were bolts of energy going through my entire body. Like it was lit up with energy. And I actually felt like my body was still shaking. Like I felt like I was still having like seizure type movements in my body. That's what I expected. And when I was asking my husband, I'm like, is my body shaking? And he's like, no, you're not shaking anymore. I'm like, are you sure? Like, you sure you don't want to come over and check? Because like, I feel like my body is just literally shaking. Like I'm being electrocuted almost from the inside out. But yet it was like the tingling wasn't painful or anything like that. It was frightening, if anything. Um, the energy just rushing up and down my body. It felt like if I could have lifted my hand, that if I would have lifted my hand up, lightning bolts would have shot out of my fingertips and out of my toes. That's how intense it felt. I can describe it only as like, do you remember those cartoons back in the day where, I don't know, I'm thinking like Tom and Jerry or something, and one of them gets electrocuted and it shows like lightning bolts going through their body. That's what I was feeling. So I couldn't understand why my body wasn't shaking in the way I was feeling that energy go through me. It was just crazy. But I couldn't move. I could not control my limbs or do anything but lay there on the floor. I was there for almost an hour. And it was probably about 45 minutes before I could lift my arm enough to and my head enough so I could see my hand, to see for myself that I wasn't shaking, that my body wasn't shaking visibly. And it wasn't. So anyways, it's crazy because then when after the hour, I finally got enough energy and control over my body that I could get myself 20 feet to the couch. So that's what I did. And as he and I are talking about what the hell just happened, I told him that I saw what was happening from outside my body, that I literally left my body and could see what was happening. And then I told him about when I went back into my body, how it felt like I was opening my eyes and seeing everything back from the perspective of laying on the floor, being inside my body. But like when I say that I felt like I was looking out of my eye sockets, it was because like it's almost like I could see the bone around it. Like I could see the skin around the eye sockets or something. Like it wasn't connected to like my eyeballs or something. Like I don't know. It's just really hard to explain how I was feeling. But wow, that really jarred me, shocked me what was happening. I had never experienced like that. I wasn't having any health problems. I haven't had any health problems. I don't have anything chronic. I'm perfectly healthy, and I was at that time, and I don't have any explanation for it. But I did have a feeling, like as I was laying there, even before I could move, as I'm laying there, because I can't do anything else, trying to figure out what the heck's going on. My husband kept asking me, like, should I call 911? Like, should I be taking you to the hospital right now? The only thing that I knew for sure was that answer was no. I just had this very calm feeling that whatever just happened was spiritually and divinely guided. I just had a feeling that I was having some type of experience. I had obviously an out-of-body experience, something that I didn't even know much about at that point. I had experience with or heard of someone personally that had a near-death experience. Our son, when he was 18 years old, I think, got into a really bad car accident and was hit by a dump truck on the driver's side where he was driving, and he was pinned in there, and the door was like crushing his body. And he said he left his body. He said he experienced God, saw God, had a telepathic conversation, And then he came back. He knew it wasn't his time and that he was safe and he was loved, and then he came back. So we're very grateful for that as well. But other than that, like I really didn't know a whole lot about out-of-body experiences that were different than the near-death experience. So, but I just had a feeling. So we weren't going to the hospital. I wasn't going to have a doctor check me out, because at that point, I'm pretty sure that they're not going to find anything. Like, they're not going to be able to explain what happened. I knew it was a divine experience, and it was meant to happen exactly the way it did. And there wasn't going to be anything medically anybody could do for me. So that was quite the experience. Now I want to go back and tell you where I was in looking at the gene keys, so you can see how this will all synchronize quite interestingly. So as I'm knowing that this is a spiritual experience, but not really being able to explain it, I've heard of the Kundalini awakening or Kundalini thing, but like, I don't know what that is either, or I didn't know what that was, or if that's what was happening, and then what to expect with that. I really didn't know, because I hadn't really looked, super hard into any of that stuff. But so the next day, I am still like, I didn't have my energy back, probably for at least 2 or 3 days or so after that experience. So I was taking it pretty easy, trying to figure out what the heck was going on, and just started looking at a bunch of other things. But anyways, since I had my Gene Keys book already on the couch, because I had been looking at it before my husband and I went to run errands that day. So it was sitting on the couch. And so the next day, when I had some time to just start to try to figure out what the heck happened, I picked that back up. And this is where it gets interesting. So I open the book, and it's on the page, on page 100 and 101. That's where the bookmark is. So right there, I'm looking at this and I'm like, okay, I'm on page 100 and 101. This made me pause, because I had been seeing and documenting synchronicities and the repeating numbers, and especially the 11 and the 111. And here we are on page 100 and 101. So we've got the 111 right here. And so you can understand why once I read it, now on top of that, let's add this. This is an excerpt right from the Gene Keys book, and it was on the section Embracing Your Higher Power. And on page 100, it was that 14th gene key that I was telling you about, and it was called Radiating Prosperity, the 14th city. And cities are basically the highest version of that specific key. There's a shadow of that key, and then there's a gift. So there's like 3 sections of each numbered key. Hard to explain. You'll have to go look at the link that I leave there for you. But anyways, this is what it says. It said the single-celled heaven. This is what the 14th city is about. My gene key, the single-celled heaven. And here's what it said. At the citic level of consciousness, energy is transmitted through the individual via the medium of the morphogenic field. Morphogenic fields are energetic grids that connect all creatures and particles of matter at a subatomic level. In order for a human being to utilize the power of this energetic matrix, their body must emit a very high frequency wavelength. At the acidic level, their whole being becomes like a vacuum. Something astounding occurs to the chemistry of a person at the acidic level, and this transformation is so physiologically powerful that it literally drives out the occupant, commonly known as the ego, right out of the vehicle. That's what it said. So it just said that the transformation is so physiologically powerful that it literally drives the occupant, commonly known as the ego, right out of the vehicle. My body being the vehicle. Let me read that again. At the acidic level of consciousness, energy, I felt that energy is transmitted through the individual via the medium of the morphogenetic field. I had the word wrong to begin with. The morphogenetic field is the energetic grid that connects all creatures and particles of matter at the subatomic level. In order for a human being to utilize the power of this energetic matrix, their body must emit a very high frequency wavelength. At the acidic level, their whole being becomes like a vacuum. Something astounding occurs to the chemistry of a person at the acidic level, and this transformation is so physiologically powerful that it literally drives out the occupant, commonly known as the ego, right out of the vehicle. Now, if that is not powerful and profound at a time like that, I don't know what it is. Like, how can that be a coincidence? That's literally where I was reading and what I was reading right before and right after that experience. So that sounds quite prophetic to me. I remember just sitting there after I read it again, because I read that section prior to me leaving with my husband to go run errands. And then the next day when I felt up to reading again, because I was still tired, I picked that book up on page 100, and page 101, there's your 111, and now it tells me how the energetic levels and all of these things and being driven out of the body, and like, what? Like, how is that not a synchronicity? There's no fucking coincidence in that. And it got to a point, like, it just becomes like to a point where it's like, I can't explain it. It sounds crazy, but that's exactly how it happened. So, like, here I am almost a year later, and yesterday, as I'm preparing for this episode to talk about this OBE, that's the out-of-body experience, OBE, I started to wonder, because I was reading this again. I hadn't read it in a while, like what those synchronicities were. I wrote all of this down at the time. Like that next day, I read that Gene Key portion that I just read to you, and I started writing down, like I got the computer out and I started documenting everything that I felt that day, what I had been reading, what I realized and remembered after. Like, I didn't even think about it until I read it again. But then I'm like, what else did I miss? Are there more synchronicities that I possibly have that show that this was coming, or that I could have, like, now I interpret a little bit differently? I don't know. So I did find something, come to find out. So I had been looking through some journals, because I am a journaler. I write so many things down. I'm very unorganized. I have journals about all different subjects. That's the only way I tried to organize them. I have daily thoughts. I have things that I write down after meditations. I do write down all my card readings every time I pull cards for myself. I've mostly only done readings for myself. I've actually just in the last few months started doing readings for other people. But the readings I do for myself just always seem to fit perfectly. So I love doing those because I feel like it's extra guidance for me. But anyway, so I started looking through this journal that had my previous card readings in there. And I did happen to find one that was dated 7/14/2023. So I figured that would be about a good time to look at because that was 6 days prior to my OBE. This reading that I did was on 7/14 and my OBE occurred on 7/20, so July 20th. So as I'm looking at the details of this reading that I did for myself, I start to see more synchronicities. So here we go. On that day, let's see, I got some notes here. I'm going to actually read these from the guidebooks of what I did. So the deck that I used for this first one was by Kyle Gray, and it is called the Gateway of Light Activation Oracle deck. And I love this deck, and it was one of my very first ones a few years ago, and I've always just felt a really strong connection to this one and the other one that I'll tell you about in a minute. But so I look at the first card that I pulled, and the reading that I did, or the spread, I did a 3-card spread called the Heart, Strength, and Challenge spread. Oh, wait, no, it's called Strength, Heart, and Challenge. Strength is first, and then Heart, and then Challenge. So in the Strength position was the Higher Heart Activation card. That was my strength. Higher Heart Activation. Now, when you think about my out-of-body experience, remember when I said how my heart was a significant thing that I felt once I was back in my body? My heart was on fire. So this is what the Higher Heart Activation guidebook, what it says about that card. This is the guidebook message. It says the higher heart chakra is the most ascended form of the heart chakra. It is found in the center of the chest in the heart region and is seen clairvoyantly as a pink color. Through this stargate of the heart, we have the potential to connect with divine love, the love that exists in all things, and experience the heaven within. This card transports us to the higher heart space where we can recognize that love is not an external essence, but a light we hold within. It has been there through every lifetime. When the higher heart becomes active, it is a recognition that the search for love has ended and the excavation of the heart has finally begun. Now, even when I read this now, my eyes just like, I just shake my head. It's hard to put this all together. But then it's the extended message of this. It says, you have experienced much fear, separation, and heartache in your lifetime. This has encouraged you to close off and shield yourself from possible hurt. For a long time, you've been trying to open yourself back up, but have been concerned about being far too vulnerable. And this is very true for me. It goes on. This card shows that you have realized that love isn't something you have to work for or search for, but is your divine inheritance. You have also recognized that this energy isn't something that comes through relationships or external experiences, but is your natural state of being. The more you close off, the more you close off from your truer self. The more you drop your shields, the more love is revealed. The more you express the love you are, the more it is reflected back to you. Love is your truth. That was the first card from a reading 6 days prior to my out-of-body experience. So I'll just keep going and tell me what you think. but I think these are super synchronistic. The card that showed up in my heart position, well, let me go back real quick. I'm glad to see that my higher heart was the strength position, because thank God that my heart was strong enough to go through what that was, because that was crazy. So in the heart position, in this reading, was a card called the Lemurian Seed Codes. It says embracing sensitivity, uniqueness, and living with grace. This says Lemuria was a civilization that was in the middle of the Pacific Ocean in ancient times. The inhabitants of this sacred land lived in complete harmony with nature and had a connection with every living being, similar to the movie Avatar. Their inner vision was fully activated to the point where it is thought that their pineal gland was fully developed and they could see for hundreds of miles in every direction, in a similar way to the sonar of dolphins and whales. It is said that these highly attuned beings knew that their civilization would end and decided to send healing waves into another part of the world for future civilizations to benefit from. They telepathically channeled their frequencies into a thought form that would become crystals that would be found thousands and possibly millions of years later. These Lemurian seeds are a type of quartz crystal mostly found in Brazil and Colombia. They are powerful crystals with striations similar to barcodes engraved on their faces. They have a feminine, receptive energy that is said to help us step into a more feminine way of being in order to help the evolution of the species. So, the extended message on this card states that you are a highly sensitive being. You might feel that this is a curse, but this card is here to let you know that this is a gift. It indicates that you have spent lifetimes upon lifetimes living with a giant shield up to stop the world from seeing the real you. But you are a highly unique soul with incredible gifts that are worth sharing. Through embracing your uniqueness, you can help many others embrace their own. This lifetime is a more graceful existence with less defense and more trust. It's not about protecting yourself, but stepping into the space of surrender and revealing your true self. Now, how true that is, because a year ago, before this out-of-body experience, like I've said in both of my previous episodes, there's no way that I would be here right now behind this microphone talking to you if it wasn't for this. This is how my life has so dramatically changed, and changed for the better, because I have confidence and a knowing that gives me that strength and that extra courage to talk to you right now. Like, I wouldn't be doing this at any other time. I wasn't planning on doing this like ever. And just so you know, it's 3:33 on the clock. And while that might not synchronize time-wise as far as how long this episode is, it's because I had to pause for a minute in the middle of it. So anyways, let me get you to this third card, because this is pretty awesome too. So this is like, you cannot make this shit up, you guys. Like, you can't. In the challenge position of my reading that day, this is the challenge card. The challenge card is named the Gaia Gateway Activation. Gaia is Earth. It's the Earth Mother, the Gaia. Gaia is the same or a different name for Earth. So, remember my feet being on the ground and how that made the energies like intensify through my feet? Well, listen to this, the meaning in this card. So the Gaia Gateway Activation card says learning experiences, wisdom transmission, and earth intelligence. You can see it already, right? Like, you can see the synchronicity right here, right? Going on. It says the Gaia Gateway is the chakra that connects us directly with the mind and intelligence of Mother Earth. This chakra is not very well known, but it is now being acknowledged as one of the key energetic spaces we can connect with to activate the ascension process. For many years, ascension has been thought of as moving beyond the limitations of the body and transcending the physical realm. But it is, in fact, the process of becoming present in the body in full awareness of the spirit within. You ain't kidding, man. Okay, continues. The Gaia Gateway is found below our feet under the Earth Chakra. But when we are connecting to it, it's best to imagine it in the center of the Earth. I wasn't doing that. The best way to describe it is as a wormhole or portal in the center of the Earth that allows us to connect directly with the non-physical intelligence of Gaia, the spiritual presence of planet Earth. The Earth is a highly spiritual, intelligent, aware being. She has lived through many challenges and experiences that have led her to where she is today. No matter what has been served up to her or how many of us have mistreated her, she has found a way to survive and thrive. So the extended message in this Gaia Gateway activation card is this. It says, sometimes it is not our role to know how everything will unfold. And when you draw this card, it is a reminder to trust the plan. The wisdom of Gaia is with you at this time, and you can enjoy the natural expansion that is taking place. You may have a tendency to go traveling and look to the stars for answers, but realize that the planet you call home has much to offer too. You have chosen to be here. This may not be easy to accept, especially if your current reality is a harsh one, but your current experiences are vital for your growth. The Earth herself cannot escape the challenges that she is facing at this time. Learn from her strength, learn from her yearning for a better future. Come back to her, as she is your chosen home. So, again, if you think that's a coincidence, just a mere coincidence that these are the cards that I pulled out 6 days prior to this happening. And I was reading that specific gene key as far as my purpose goes. That was talking about me being, my ego being pushed out of my body, literally. If you don't see the connection here, then you're probably not listening anyways. All of you that are still here are you get the connection. Isn't that fucking crazy? Like, what? Like, it almost literally told me what was going to happen. Of course, when I read this 6 days prior to the OBE happening, to that experience, when I was reading it then, I was not interpreting any of this information the same way. I wasn't reading any of these cards as, oh yeah, I'm about to have an out-of-body experience. I wasn't reading that gene key as, oh yeah, that's physically and literally going to happen to me. So clearly, that was somewhat of a prophetic message. And it doesn't even end there. I know there's more. I'm pretty sure that there was also more information on Disclosure News. I follow the Schumann Resonance and I look at it on this website called disclosurenews.it. And there's more information within that website than just the Schumann Resonance. If you want to explore something that's a little more out there, go to disclosurenews.it. And because I'm pretty sure that I've got something else there, but I really wanted to get this episode out and talk to you guys about this out-of-body experience and what I was reading prior to, the reading that I pulled for myself prior to. And in the next episode, I'll be talking to you about another reading that I did prior to that also synchronizes with it. Because I think I'm going to have to separate this out-of-body experience plus synchronicities and all of that probably into 2 parts here, 2 episodes, because I think this one's getting quite long. But it's just so crazy. And I know that I still have so much more to learn and have yet to realize within myself. I know we all do. I mean, this life is literally a learning experience every step of the way. And I'm still learning with you while I'm here sharing these experiences. This is why I'm talking to you right now, because like I explained in the last 2 episodes, and especially the last one, like I just wanted you to know that I feel like I'm just like a normal person like anybody else. You know, I'm not special, other than we're all special. We're all way more special than we believe or that we have been led to believe. And I think there's a reason that school tends to separate us. Even the church tends to separate us from our true essence and our true spirit. But if you get nothing else out of this podcast about my experience from last year, is that we really don't have anything to fear, do we? Like when we really think about it, like what do most people fear? I think that most people fear death. I used to. I mean, I used to not think about it a whole lot because like, yeah, I don't want to have to think about how I'm going to die or anything. But, you know, you see people in pain, or you see these terrible accidents that people die in, and you think of their pain. Like we emotionally go to like how much pain they were in. And like, well, we've seen people, unfortunately, have experiences where a disease or something, like they actually live through a lot of that pain before they die. But after having this experience, one thing that brings me some solace, I guess, is that there is more. This isn't it. It isn't just this life, and you don't have to go on knowing or wondering if there's so-called life after death, using air quotes. That's really where life is. This is just an experience. We are all those spiritual beings having a human experience on this earth. And we're here to learn, and we're here to explore and to experiment and to experience. And I've said it before, like if you are going through your own journey of self-discovery and awakening to different truths, like pay attention to those things, because if you're being guided a certain way and you're hearing it, you're listening to it, you're kind of getting it, but you're not doing anything with it, be very careful with that, because how I feel about that now is that I had been pushing all of that away. Like I was looking for it. I was trying to find out who I was and what my purpose was, but I wasn't doing anything else. I was staying in my hermit mode of just gaining knowledge. I wasn't putting any of it into action. I wasn't really talking to anybody about it. In fact, I wasn't talking to most people about the things I was doing because I was afraid. I didn't want to be vulnerable. I didn't want to subject myself to other people's judgments, opinions, criticisms. I didn't want to be called crazy. I didn't want people to be thinking that I lost my mind. Because the things that I'm doing now is very, very different than what I spent the first 53, 54 years of my life doing. Very different. but also a lot more gratifying. I feel so much more fulfilled. I have so much more to be grateful for. And I've always felt happy and grateful, but I'm experiencing it now in ways that my cup is overflowing. I am so abundantly, beautifully blessed. And I'm blessed to have had that experience, even though it was scary. It scared the fuck out of me at the time. I mean, it kind of did, but it kind of didn't, because it kind of knew. I was excited. Once I finally got the control of my body back, and my consciousness was actually able to control my body now again. Like, I was excited. I had bouts of laughter and just like shaking my head, like, I don't even know, like, awesome that this happened to me. I don't know yet what I'm doing with it, or what's going to be done, but like, I was excited that it happened to me. I was happy to experience it because now I had another perspective. And now I'm able to talk to you about what that looks like and why we might need to pay attention to the things that we're learning along this journey. And not only pay attention, but if you're being called to do something with that, if you're being called to speak your truth, or if you're being called to create art or to write, do it. If you're being called to share in any way, do it. Because I believe that we are all called in some way, shape, or form to help others. And that's going to look different for everybody. It just is. There's no way to know exactly what that looks like, but you will know. That's for you to find and you to feel, because you'll know it when you're there. Because never in a million would I have thought that right now I would feel comfortable and happy and peaceful while I'm behind this microphone talking to you guys, doing a podcast. So anyways, thank you again for being here. There will be another part to this. I will add some more information. There's a few more synchronicities that are tied to this out-of-body experience that I will share with you. And we'll just keep it going. Keep talking, keep exploring, keep experiencing. Be curious, be loving, love yourself, and embrace that rebellious sacred heart. Please comment, share, like, do all the things, subscribe, send me some fan mail, whatever makes you feel good, or just don't, or just show up at the next episode, whatever makes you feel good. It's all cool. I love you all, and I wish you an awesome day.